This video will cover the last several modules in this chapter. Three major somatic sensory pathways carry information from the skin and muscles to the CNS, and you can see the posterior column pathway, the spinocerebellar pathway, and the spinothalamic pathway. And with the spinothalamic pathway, just notice there's an anterior and a lateral. We'll be looking at somatotopy, a functional map of primary somatosensory cortex. And to do this, we use a sensory homunculus, which is a little human. It is a map, somatotope, showing the relative size of the cortex devoted to any specific body area. So the map is here, and you can see this homunculus here. There is an anterior spinothalamic tract for crude touch and pressure sensations from the body, and a lateral tract for pain and temperature sensations from the body. So they travel up to the appropriate region in the cerebral cortex, to the appropriate area of this, the primary somatosensory cortex. And you can see here how large the hand is, say, compared to the foot. And that represents the fact that we receive much more sensory information from our hands than our feet. You can see how large the lips are. More sensory information is received from the lips than the chin, for example. The somatic nervous system controls skeletal muscles through upper and lower motor neurons. So there's not only is there a sensory homunculus, there's a motor homunculus. And the motor homunculus is a functional map of the primary motor cortex. And in the same way, the proportions reflect the number of motor units innervated and the degree of fine motor control in that corresponding body region. So again, you see how large the hand is and how small the foot is. And this is for, this is the motor pathway. So I guess you can realize how important the hand is in fine motor control as compared to the foot. There are multiple levels of somatic motor control, and we're just going to briefly cover this one. There are many nuclei in the spinal cord and brain that are involved in controlling skeletal muscle contractions. Generally, the closer the motor center is to the cerebral cortex, the more complex the motor activity. The cerebellum coordinates motor activities at multiple levels. So here are the levels of somatic motor control from least to most complex. The most complex being the cerebral cortex. And that's all we're going to say about this topic. Nervous system disorders may result from problems with neurons, problems with pathways, or a combination of the two. I don't know if you've heard of referred pain, but referred pain is the sensation of pain in a part of the body other than the actual source. For example, the pain of a heart attack felt in the left arm, not in the heart. That's referred pain. So what happens is these pain sensations arriving at the spinal cord segment can actually stimulate interneurons in that spinothalamic pathway, and it stimulates the primary sensory cortex. The pain is perceived as coming from the corresponding part of the body surface. We don't have a visceral homunculus. Parkinson's disease, the substantia nigra neurons are damaged or secrete less dopamine, and dopamine inhibits shaking motions. The basal nuclei become more active, increasing muscle tone and producing stiffness. Starting movements are difficult because antagonistic muscle groups do not relax. And so movement, every part of every movement is voluntarily controlled through concentration. Rabies is a bite that literally injects the virus into the animal, and it travels up the axon terminal and back into the central nervous system through retrograde flow. This is usually fatal. But other pathogens, such as bacteria, viruses, even toxins, can also bypass our central nervous system defenses through exoplasmic transport. CP, or cerebral palsy, is a number of disorders that affect voluntary movement. It's non-progressive. It appears early in life, in infancy, and continues throughout life, often associated with stressful childbirth, lack of oxygen to the infant, is also associated with maternal exposure to drugs and alcohol, and it may be a genetic defect. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, is progressive, degenerative, affecting motor neurons, and it destroys both upper and lower motor neurons so that the skeletal muscles atrophy. This is also called Lou Gehrig's disease, from the famous baseball player who died from it. Stephen Hawking, a physicist, has ALS. Alzheimer's disease is a progressive disorder causing loss of higher order cerebral functions, and these are often problems in the hippocampus, which is the memory center. It is the most common cause of senile dementia or senility. Symptoms may appear at age 50 to 60 or later. It also affects younger people. Approximately 2 million people have it. 50% of the 2 million are over 65, 50% are over 85, and is responsible for about 100,000 deaths per year. Multiple sclerosis, or MS, is a CNS disease characterized by recurrent incidents of demyelination of axons of the optic nerve, the brain, and spinal cord. And so, depending on where the demyelination is, the symptoms would occur. The disease often progresses. Onset is ages 30 to 40, and it's 1.5 times more common in women.